Hi everyone, welcome to Eve Talks It All, a general video and audio podcast talking about books, movies, TV, music, video games, and so on and so forth. Today I got an author deep dive for you. I have not done one in a little while. I believe the last one I did was sometime last June or July. I did Julia Armfield, but a lot of the authors that I did for this series, whether I kept the video or deleted it, have been 3 books or less, so it's kind of I would say a bit of a small feat, a bit easier to digest. I think Holly Jackson I did, she has 6 books, yeah, I think that was the biggest one, and Karen McManus, that one I did, but I deleted it because I wasn't massively happy with that video at the end of the day. But anyway, I digress. So that was like the biggest challenge, but today I'm reaching a new record and reviewing an author who has done 10 books so far, with the last one being released just this past week gone, and that is none other but Riley Sager. So all jokes aside, Riley Sager is an author who has never let me down in a way that I never want to pick up another book of his. There have been some things in his stories that I didn't necessarily love. I do have some books that are rated a little bit lower, but overall I had a high success rate with the way that he writes his stories. So Riley Sager is a pseudonym. His real name is Todd Ritter. He started writing since 2017 and has consistently been publishing a book every year. Whether or not you think that that is a sustainable business practice or creative practice, that's a whole other thing. Obviously, when it comes to releases, there are a lot of different factors that go into that. And as far as Riley goes, his books can be a bit formulaic, but he always explores different settings and different premises. When it comes to his stories, I would say that trauma and dealing with that, also a lot of family relationships, are huge themes in his books. All apart from one are set from a female POV. A lot of his female characters are around the late 20s, 30s mark, and it involves, again, them discovering something about their past or being put in a situation because of their past choices and trying to just heal from their past and also untangle the present. So how I will do this, I will go through the books chronologically and just give you a little bit of an overview and what I think Riley tried to say with this book, and then I'll give you my personal ranking of the books at the end of that. And something that I've not done before, but with an author as prominent with twist writing as Riley Sager is, I will have a spoiler section after everything, so I will tell you where the spoilers start, where I will go through each twist in each book and just tell you if I liked it or not, if I thought that was a good twist. And I'm not gonna rank them based out of 5-10 stars or anything like that, but just say, did I think it was good? Yes or no? Then just give you some final thoughts, I guess. Or rather, I'll do that before I start the spoilers. So basically, obviously, if you read all of them, then feel free to watch that section. If you haven't read, but don't really care about spoilers, although I would recommend going into this blind, his books, I mean, but again, you do you, then do watch that section. If not, then feel free to click out before it starts. But without any further ado, let's dive into his books. So his very first debut novel that he wrote in 2017 is Final Girls. It is inspired by none other than my favorite slasher movie of all time, John Carpenter's Halloween 1978. And Riley's inspiration was in the sense that he thought, what happens to the final girls after the massacre? How do they go on? And he wanted to explore that in his story. And I do think that is something that's not often portrayed in slasher genre, because a lot of the time sequels either kill the final girl off in the first 10 minutes. Friday the 13th is a good example of that. Or the final girls get stuck into a constant loop of evading the killer in the sequels to the point where they become a completely other character altogether. They become some kind of like an action-like hero. For example, Laurie Strode from Halloween. She's chased by Michael in like 5 different movies. Sidney Prescott from Scream. She becomes something completely different. You have all sorts of examples, but this is not something that's explored often, because I feel like, I guess it does make it a different genre. So what is the book about exactly? So we have our main protagonist, Quinn, a survivor of a massacre at a cabin in the woods. Her and her friends took a trip when she was younger, and it again ended in a tragedy. She was a sole survivor, and there are also 2 other final girls. Their names are Lisa and Sam, and so basically they are all unrelated massacres, completely different people, different killers. And Quincy's story is that an escaped mental patient committed the murders of her friends, but she doesn't remember anything from that night. She was rescued by a cop on duty named Coop, who she stayed in touch with all these years, and they're now close friends and confidants. So obviously, as you would imagine, when we meet Quincy, she is kind of floating, trying to keep her head above water, I guess. She is addicted to Xanax, but hides that from everyone in her life. It's kind of like a high-functioning alcoholic in a way. She has a baking blog. Like, she lets a lot of her frustration, into baking. And she also goes jogging a lot. Overall, she's very repressed. She has a fiancé who doesn't actually know a lot of the details of what happened to her overall, because obviously she doesn't remember a lot, but she doesn't talk about it with him either, because she doesn't want to be pitied or labeled as just a victim. And we also get scenes from her past that are leading up to the murders. So that's where like that little bit of a slasher element comes in this story, because we get the young adults, Quincy's friends and her, they go to this cabin, and we know how it's gonna end, so that's a little bit of a horror vibe there. Riley always likes to tether the line between thriller and horror, and I think that he does it in this book really well. So we have that timeline, and it's something that is also quite prominent in all of, actually maybe not all, but most of Riley's books have dual timeline. I will point out the ones that don't, but things kick off a bit when one of those 2 other final girls shows up at Quincy's door, and says that she thinks that she's being followed by someone, and the 3rd final girl is dead. Lisa is the one who dies in mysterious circumstances. At first they think that she took her own life, but then rule it out as a homicide. And Sam is the one who shows up at Quincy's door, and the 2 women kind of get involved, not romantically, but they've never met in person before, even though the interviewers wanted these 3 final girls to have an interview together, kind of to, well, we know how reporters are. To them, anything is up for grabs. So they've never met before, and now it's the first time that they're actually seeing the other person who went through something so terrible, and that causes them to bond in a way that no one else can understand. And things only escalate once Quincy realizes that there might more like definitely be someone who's after them, and that she is in danger and she might be next with whatever this person has planned for them. So again, this book really explores that PTSD, that trauma, how going through something so terrible can make you closed off from everyone, can make you very vigilant to an unhealthy degree, very in denial, repressed about your own feelings, and how also how going through something super traumatic and terrible doesn't necessarily give you a nice person badge. Because Quincy is not a likable protagonist. She is not a good person. And in a way that makes her interesting, because in true crime and in all that sort of thing, we have this vision that there's this perfect victim stereotype, whether it's a survivor or unfortunately a murder victim, deceased somehow in other ways. So it's nice to see that, yeah, she went through something terrible, but she's not objectively nice or good. She is a human. She's a person. And there's a bit of a rage element as her and Sam get into some shenanigans together that get a bit out of hand, and she also makes certain choices in regards to her relationships. So I think that's all I can say. That's spoiler free now, but we will come back to this later. Then Riley's second book, released in 2018, is The Last Time I Lied, and it was inspired by watching the film called Picnic at a Hanging Rock, and he wanted to write a story where 3 girls disappear into the woods. That's the story, so he just decided, yeah, this is what the hook is going to be, and the rest of the story evolved from that. So in this one, we have our main protagonist, Emma, and she was part of the summer camp program when she was a teenager, and she was sharing a cabin with these 3 other girls, and those 3 girls disappeared completely out of nowhere one night and never were seen again. So Emma lives with survivor's guilt. She also lives with she's doubted by some people who think that she may know more than she's letting on, even though she says that she doesn't remember anything, she doesn't know anything. And I can't speak today. 15 or so years later, she gets approached by the camp director to be an art person, teacher, counselor, whatever you want to call it, at the camp, the same camp, and she gets assigned to stay at the same cabin that she stayed all those years ago, and she gets assigned a group of another 3 teen girls, but obviously now she's in her late 20s, early 30s, and things take a turn when those girls disappear as well, in nearly identical circumstances. So this is the second Riley book that I ever read, and my memory is a bit fuzzy because of that. Like, it's been, I think, 2-something years since I read it, but I remember it leaving a big impression on me because the summer camp atmosphere is immaculate. It's perfect. Very descriptive, which always helps. He always explores different settings in his books. So in Final Girls, you have New York City. Here you have a summer camp. And Emma is, yet again, a woman who is experiencing PTSD in a different way because she wasn't a survivor of a massacre, but she was a survivor in the fact that 3 of her friends, fellow campers, whatever, disappeared without a trace, and she didn't. And obviously that would leave you with a lot of guilt, with a lot of questions. Why wasn't it me? Why did I survive and they didn't? Obviously the bodies were never found, but when you don't hear from someone for 15 years, you kind of assume, you know, the worst, unfortunately. And she is an artist, and the way that she expresses her trauma is that the 3 girls who disappeared are always in her drawings somewhere, and she draws a lot of, paints a lot of wood imagery, forest imagery, because obviously they disappeared in the woods, and it's a way for her to cope. And obviously once she becomes the counselor at the camp, she is kind of forced to relive a lot of her past, and then things start coming out, as always, in very titular thriller fashion. She's confronted with her demons. So that is very in line with what the story is going for. And again, I can't say much else without spoilers. I would say that it is very, especially back then, even today, I think it's very thriller-esque to have a character who, the narrator, who we don't know if we can trust for sure. And it is, you know, it's definitely a plot device. It's definitely a device in a way that you think, well, is this narrator reliable? And then you think, I hope it's not the sort of thing where the author's taking us for fools and just like, oh, I fooled you and there are a million plot holes. But I do think that out of all the books that Riley has, this one doesn't really get much criticism, because there are some books of his that do get a lot of criticism. Final Girls is one of them. But this one is quite highly regarded even among people who don't particularly like his writing. I definitely can understand why, and I will talk about what I thought of the twists at the end. Then I have Lock Every Door, the book that he wrote in 2019, and this book is actually dedicated to Ira Levin, and it's one of my more recent reads of his. It's again set in New York City. Riley seems to love New York, and we have Lucy, our main character, who she is also carrying some past demons, but we're going for something just a little different here, because in both Final Girls and Last Time I Lied, we have clear dual timelines that kind of lead us into finding out exactly what happened and what went down. Here we are mainly focused on the present. I think there are a couple like little chapters of some flashbacks to Lucy's past, but technically, thinking about it, the whole story up until a certain point is kind of told retroactively, because we start with an incident of Lucy being in a hospital saying that she never wants to come back to Bartholomew, and then we go back to 6 days prior. So that is a whole other storytelling device, but again, it is something different from his previous 2 books. So it shows that even 7 years ago, Riley was willing to try something different and wasn't afraid to experiment with different narration techniques. So Lucy is down on her luck. She is fired from her job, made redundant, whatever you want to call it. Her boyfriend is cheating on her with some random girl from his class, and because they live together, she has to move out now, and she's crashing on her best friend's sofa, but she feels like she's a burden. So when this offer comes to house sit one of the most prestigious apartments in Bartholomew, where all the rich people live, she jumps at the chance to prove something to someone and herself, I guess. She immediately finds out that this is a bit dodgy, because obviously if something's too good to be true, it actually is, because a fellow apartment sitter on the same floor or a floor below, like in the same building. In that building, she disappears, and everyone just kind of wants to sweep it under the rug, forget that it ever happened, but Lucy knows in her gut that there's something more to the story than everyone's letting on. So in a true Riley vein, obviously he does have something to say with the story, and instead of specific trauma due to something horrible that happened in the past, we obviously do have something that happened to Lucy. So for some reason, I kept calling this character Lucy when it's actually Jules. So sorry about that. I'm pretty sure that one of these characters is called Lucy, and my brain was like, it's Monday, I'm tired, I want a nap. So sorry about that, but it's Jules. So from now on, I'm gonna call her Jules. So yeah, I need to refer to my notes more, but I kind of just got into it. So basically, Jules, she decides to investigate this disappearance herself, and a lot of the commentary that comes out of that is obviously rich people are living on a completely different level of being, them not having any sympathy and exploiting those who are poor, those who are desperate to pay the bills to survive, and so on and so forth. As we know, this is very true to life. And to me, at least, it didn't really feel forced. Jules felt like a genuine character who was easy to root for. You could say that probably the most likable protagonist by Riley so far. She feels driven to look for her neighbor who disappeared, partially because of her past trauma, but also because it's just who she is as a person, because she knows that if she doesn't do it, then no one else will, and she just can't let it slide, she can't let it sit still and become a cold case. And it's definitely interesting. I would say that the twist definitely got me in a way, but I will talk about that later. I would say there's definitely something different. It has that little bit of a creepy vibe as well, and I think that it can be hard to create an isolated vibe in a big city setting where you feel cut off from everything, but in a place like that, an apartment that's completely its own ecosystem, I suppose that it can happen. So yeah, I think that was pretty well done, and I really enjoyed it. I will share where it lies within my ranking later. I have A Home Before Dark that was written in 2020. Arguably Riley's most serious project yet. It was inspired by, or Riley listened to a podcast and got inspired by that whole was it a hoax or not. So we focus on seemingly a haunting story. We have our main character, Maggie. I got the name correctly this time. And she has lived in, she lived in this house when she was little that she doesn't really remember much of, but their family fled from there pretty early on, so kind of like an Amityville Horror where they fled like 27 days later or something. I don't know, it was like 20 something, 3 weeks something, without any of their things and all that. So Maggie's father wrote a book about their experience in this house, and it became famous. He became famous, and it became the topic of a lot of people, whether they believed that the place was haunted, whether they thought that Maggie's father was just some nobody trying to make money off and all that. But the action kicks off when he passes away and leaves Maggie the house where it all happened, and she decides that it's finally time to confront her childhood repressed memories and figure out, was this place haunted or not. And it's told kind of a book within the book style, where we get passages of her father's book, and that's where the horror elements come in for the story, and the more investigative psychological thrillery aspect of Maggie's journey. This one, you can definitely tell that Riley took the book very seriously. It feels more serious than the other three. It feels like he really paid a lot of attention to detail here, and this book is established as one of the fandom's favorites. It's in a lot of people's top 3s, and it is definitely an interesting exploration of familial trauma, of, again, repressed memories, trying to find out what happened to you, whether or not you can trust your sources. And strangely enough, I don't know, I read it at a weird time in my life after recently moving into our house, and I think I was having a bit of a brain fog, because I think this is the book that I struggle to remember the most, despite reading some of the others earlier, like even longer ago. And I don't know why. Maybe I would benefit from rereading it, but I know that I liked it. It was a really good book, and it did have a lot to offer. And I think that writing it that way allowed Riley to explore, like, he loves to dabble into horror. He did that with Final Girls. He's doing it again now. He loves to dabble into horror without Survive the Night, that was released in 2021. This is a bit controversial. I would say a bit of a controversial release from him. It's in a lot of people's least favorites. Again, I will tell you where this ranks for me. It's set in the 90s, and it could be classified as a road trip thriller, I would say for sure, because we have our main character, Charlie, who is experiencing, again, trauma from her roommate's murder by the campus killer, and she decides to hitch a ride home from the campus to go back home because she thinks of dropping out and all of that stuff. But she realizes that the person giving her a lift could very well be this campus killer. And things just kick off from there. This story definitely has aspects that I completely understand why some people don't like it. It has a certain mental health aspect. Well, that's one way to put it. Mental health aspect that I didn't love either, don't get me wrong. It's literally acknowledged that Charlie's condition, where she suffers from these hallucinations, was put in there to explain why she would stay in the car if she thought that she was being driven by a serial killer. And I feel like that is a sign of the writing. It's a flaw. I would say it's kind of a technical flaw. Surely you can think of better ways to go about this. And obviously we don't enjoy mental health being a plot point in this day and age. So I can definitely understand that. But obviously, again, I also understand what Riley attempts to do. He attempts to explore Charlie's guilt for not being able to tell who her friend's killer was, because she was there, but because of her condition, she can't remember their face, and she's just struggling with being in the real world, because it's so easier to retreat into a movie and forget everything. So we get a lot of that. It's definitely like those passages, they coincide a lot with her like mental state, and then the faster moments of the story. Again, this is the first Riley that I've ever read, so my memory on it isn't super amazing, but I will share what I thought on the twists and some choices made later. But I understand Riley's vision. Do I think he did it amazingly in this book? No, but I am a sucker for a road trip setting. Not enough thrillers do that because it's not easy to do, and I think that aspect he did do pretty well. And again, maybe not a success critically, but I think that it still deserves some credit. Then another controversial book of his, House Across the Lake, released in 2022. We have Casey, who is kind of a struggling actress, and she has been advised to do an unofficial rehab at her family's house, and she starts getting obsessed with the neighbors across the lake, hence the name, where this book kind of takes a bit of a parody, almost, of that trope of a woman so obsessed with her neighbors because she doesn't want to deal with her own problems as she's sipping a giant glass of wine. I mean, that's basically what that limited series with Kristen Bell parodied. Even the name, it's like 20 words, something ridiculous. But things kick into gear when she thinks that the woman of the pairing across the lake is missing and the husband had something to do with it. And again, we get Casey's dealing with something else, like her own trauma, which is why she's so focused on this couple, because she doesn't want to deal with that. She's dealing with her failed career, with her husband's passing, and it's very, again, I completely understand what Riley was trying to do here. Do I think that he did it the best? Not necessarily. And there is definitely a genre shift in this book that turned a lot of people off, and I completely understand why. And I think that I didn't hate this book because I knew that it was happening, and I'm glad that I did. And I say it in some recommendation videos that this book becomes a supernatural thriller halfway through, and I think that you need to know that before you go in to hammer your expectations in the right way, I should say. So it's definitely, I can understand why people don't like this one, and there were certain things that didn't work for me either, but I will talk about that more in the spoiler section. Then the next book, written in 2023, is The Only One Left, and this one features Kit, who is a nurse that is kind of she was put on suspension for a case of believed negligence, and now she kind of doesn't have a choice but work for the town's killer, as they call her. Like, they call her many names, but her name is Lenora Hope, and it's believed that 50 years ago, because this is set in the 80s, so in 1929, that she killed her family, and technically there's never been enough proof, but also she was the only one found in the house, so who else it could have been, right? And then as Kit starts taking care of Lenora, she specifies in the book she's not like a nurse, she's like a caregiver, but she's basically forced to act like a nurse anyway. So as she's doing all her tasks, she finds out that Lenora can type like very slowly using one finger, because she only has use of one hand, like just her wrist basically. And she decides to tell Kit her story, what really happened that night of the murders, but obviously it's a very long roundabout way. And I read this one most recently, not counting the new one, and we deal with a lot of stuff. Kit and Lenora are purposefully paralleled. You have the entire bit of Kit judging Lenora, thinking that whether she's guilty or innocent, and then obviously the thing that happened with her at her work. A lot of people in the town are judging her, obviously not as harshly as a perceived mass murder, whatever the term would be, but still judging because someone did die, and then her processing that while also, again, focusing on Lenora and what she wants, because that's what stops her from spiraling about her own life and her own issues. And the setting of a house on a cliff that's literally sinking into the sea, it's It's really effective. And the way that it's described, it's done so well. Again, you really feel isolated. And I think that all the characters were interesting. Even if, obviously, again, Riley's really good at writing unlikable characters. Kit is not necessarily on the more unlikable side, but she has a lot going on that doesn't make her the most pleasant person to decipher, but you still can't help root for her. Overall, it explores a lot about family, a lot about bitterness, pettiness, a lot about revenge in a way. And obviously we have the dual timeline thing where Lenora's typing her story and events lead to that night and so on. So it's very, very... Sorry, my brain is doing that thing where it doesn't want to work. But I can easily understand why a lot of people say that it is his best one. If not, then one of them. Then I have Middle of the Night, where we have the only male protagonist in his bibliography so far. Ethan was a little boy having a sleepover in a tent in his back garden with his friend Ethan, and Ethan disappeared. And it's now 30 years later, and he comes back to his hometown, and obviously it's still an unsolved mystery, and he is looking to I guess he's looking for closure, looking for peace. This one, it was definitely, I think that some criticism got to him in terms of his stories being so convoluted and twisty, which I personally don't mind. That's why I read a thriller, but I think that he took some of them to heart, and in a way the story felt a bit more grounded. And I could argue that it parallels The Last Time I Lied, because it features, again, survivor's guilt, a missing friend, except obviously here was from his own backyard, so it feels a lot more contained. Like it seems like it had to have been some kind of an abduction, but there are no answers really, and there's a lot of grief, a lot of pain that Ethan carries even to his day. It bleeds into his life because he doesn't want to have his own kids, because he doesn't want to risk that happening to them. There's a lot to explore there, and it feels very, again, it feels more grounded in a way that we focus a lot on that grief, on the life that he could have had, and again, we get that small town atmosphere. Everyone knows everyone, which is not something that's not been done often in his stories, so I feel like in this one we focus a lot on that. And again, I'll tell you what I've thought of the twist in a bit, but we have the last couple books. So we got With a Vengeance, published in 2025. This one is a bit cray-cray in terms of the premise. We have a setting of 1950s, and Anna, she plotted like the world's most convoluted plan, because in World War II, 6 rich people basically made sure that her family's lives and her reputation were destroyed, and she lost her entire family basically. But it wasn't just that, they also ruined their reputation post-death, and they just completely ruined her life for money, to save their asses basically. So she makes this convoluted plan of getting them to confess their sins at this journey of a train that won't make any stops until they get to the final stop, where she will hand them over to the police. Like, that's her plan. That's what she wants. She wants these people to know what they did and pay for it. She is looking for justice. But things get a little bit off that track, pun intended, when she realizes that there is an actual killer on the board, because killing them was never her plan, but this person seems to have that in their plan, and she wants to find out who this person is before it's too late. This definitely mirrors Agatha Christie's works, especially Murder on the Orient Express. It's a really good homage to that. We're back at a bunch of twists again. They are super everywhere, and I actually didn't find a summary of them to remind myself, but we'll get to that later. So here we have, I would say Anne's probably the most likable protagonist of all of Riley's works to me. She is genuinely a broken woman who lost everything, and you really sympathize with her and understand her, because she kind of also feels so undamaged by what happened. She doesn't let the bitterness and the pettiness and the rage consume her. She still wants to pursue justice, not vengeance. That's a big topic of the story. She wants to do what's right, even if it would feel satisfying for her to just wreak her own havoc on these people. And we also obviously have that whole isolated setting. We have all the twists and turns of killings, and it definitely reads like a whodunit vintage style, and you could tell that Riley did a lot of research on the train mechanisms, because everything feels legit on how everything worked back then. So yeah, it's definitely a well-researched story. And then finally, the one that was published just last week, we have The Unknown. And this is definitely a story with lots of layers. So we have Marin, who's a struggling actress, and she gets hired by a very renowned film director to be alongside some quite famous people in his new movie that is about witchcraft and seances and all that. And in true method acting fashion, he wants to spend a week on this island where the women that the film's inspired by actually disappeared. And Marin doesn't really have a choice. She wants this. She wants to be famous. She wants to feed her ego. She's not the most likable person, but she wants to feed her ego. She wants to impress her parents, and she wants money. She doesn't want to be waiting tables forever, so she agrees. And then we get the whole shebang of history starting to repeat itself, and we obviously get the diary entries from 100 years ago of the women who were originally on this island, and again, things kick into gear when the same starts happening again. And this talks about a lot of themes about acting industry, about certain predatory things that happen in said industry. There's also lots of spiritualism, because the main character, Marin, she is quite spiritual. She experienced a trauma in her childhood where she thought that she was seeing ghosts, and therefore she's very inclined to believe that something strange is happening on this island. And again, there's a lot going on, and I won't go much deeper into that because this is a new one, and I understand that not everyone is able to read it that quickly, because it's only been out for a week at the time of me filming this. So I will shut up now, and I will now rank the 10 books in my order of preference. So worst to best. So my bottom book that I still ranked 3.5 stars, so I still think that it's a good ranking, is The House Across the Lake, because while I knew that the twist was coming and I knew how to prepare for it, I still don't think that it was necessary, the twist into the supernatural. And I didn't particularly enjoy the way that the whole woman being an alcoholic and therefore not being believed was portrayed. I thought that it could have been done a bit better, especially since there was already some feedback on it from books like The Last Time I Lied and Survived the Night. Then I have a bunch of 4 stars, so how I would rank them. So I would put How would I do this, actually? I did have it written down, but I'm thinking, is that really how I want to go about it? But I'll just go with my gut. So I'm going to put Middle of the Night as my number 9, because it's still a really good book and I still really liked it. But it feels like Riley leaned in too much into the criticism from his haters and pivoted really hard into another direction. And I personally struggled to connect with certain things in the story. And then, again, all of his books I still enjoyed and still liked, but obviously some more than others, because 4 stars is still really good, but in the rankings, some books have to be last. It's just how it is. So then I got, in number 8, I have Survive the Night, and that's for the same reasons. There are certain things in the story that I just don't like how they were handled, even though I enjoyed the vibe as a whole. And then in number 7, I have Final Girls. Again, for the same reason. There were certain things that I did not necessarily love in terms of how stuff was dealt with when portraying certain things, but I really did enjoy it. And then at number 6, I have Home Before Dark, because like I said, for some reason, again, it could be my brain fog, could be whatever, I struggled to connect with what was happening, but who knows, maybe if I reread it now. It's a 4.5, so it's still a great book, but it just wasn't clicking for me at the time of reading like his past books clicked, and the ones I read since have clicked. So maybe just unfortunate timing. It just didn't feel like an all-time favorite. And then The Unknown would be at number 5, just because, again, I didn't enjoy certain things, which I will mention in the spoiler section. And I just think that this book tried a little too much, and I will elaborate what I mean later on, but for now I'm just going to say that I feel like it tried to be too many things at once, and it actually could have benefited from cutting some stuff out and just leaving the story like that, because it was already quite meaty. And then number 4 is The Last Time I Lied. Again, I would have preferred certain things about that whole unreliable female narrator who clearly has problems to be done just a little bit different, but I'll cut him some slack because obviously that was a huge part of the story. And then 3 5 stars, so number 3 in the top 3 is Lock Every Door, and then With a Vengeance at number 2, and the only one left at number 1 as my current favorite Riley Sager book until the next one. So now I will just go through the plot twist. So this is where the spoilers start. So if you don't want me telling you what the twists are and what I think about them, bow out now. Thank you for watching. If you're staying, let's talk about that. I will just have my laptop where I have stuff written down so I just can read everything out accurately, so I don't make something up by accident. So, Final Girls. So the plot twist, the major twist, was that it was Coop, the one who found Quincy and has been a supportive figure in her life ever since. It was him who committed the murders, and he was also responsible for the deaths of the other final girls, Lisa and Sam. And I didn't mind this twist. I thought, yeah, that makes sense, because obviously Riley's the sort of author who's not going to play by the rules, and him being like, yep, no, someone else committed these murders. I mean, I thought that someone else has to be responsible, because it would just be too simple to just have a lead up to the story that we already know. So the fact that it was someone who was keeping tabs on Quincy this whole time and trying to get her to be with him, because obviously she ends up cheating on her fiance with him, or they were broken up at the time, but either way, it's like a blurry timeline. So yeah, it makes sense to me, and I did not mind that. And another major twist is that Sam, who appears on Quincy's doorstep, is actually an imposter, and her real name is Tina, who is a childhood friend of a man who was initially convicted, suspected of the massacre where Quincy's friends were killed. So, the reason why she did that, pretended to be Sam, was that so she could investigate what really happened that night. And, whether Quincy knew more than she let on. That's why throughout the book she kept trying to push her to talk about it. And this one, I thought, okay, a bit out there, but at the same time, it made sense in this world that Riley, because he writes in this elevated reality almost thing, it made sense because they specified multiple times that they never actually met up in person, and that they obviously was a time before social media was so prevalent that you could look up anyone anywhere, and obviously as people age, you know, they could have work done, they could have like change everything. It's possible. It's like, I didn't have strong feelings about it. I was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, let's just go with that. So that's my opinions on that. Then for The Last Time I Lied, the main twist is that Vivian, one of the girls who disappeared that night, is alive and living under a new identity. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because, again, they focused on her character so much that I thought there has to be a bit more to that than, oh, she just disappeared into the woods. And the reason why she did it was to escape her abusive childhood. And in a way, it's kind of sad. And also gives that a bit of layer. Because she wasn't really portrayed as a nice person, but obviously you never know what's on. And we also know that Vivian killed the other two girls because they failed to help her drowning sister. Which, again, a bit extreme. But, again, justice, vengeance, whatever you want to call it, it's clearly something that Riley likes to explore in his book, so I was like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it was like at the very end of the story. And that little reveal that Emma heard someone knock on the cabin, and she realized it was one of the girls, but didn't open the door. Well, we knew that Emma was a bit unreliable and imperfect, so again, that didn't really surprise me, it kind of made sense. I know I keep saying stuff makes sense, but like, it does make sense to me, because again, Riley likes to write morally compromised characters. And then Lock Every Door. So the main twist was that she never escaped the Bartholomew, that they took her back inside and she's in a room that resembles a hospital. I have to admit, that got me. I loved that twist. It actually made me feel worried for her character. I thought, oh my god, he's gonna kill her off. Again, Jules, not Lucy. I don't understand where I got Lucy from, but whatever. So obviously, that's one twist. That surprised me. I liked that one. Then, the whole thing with them being not devil worshippers, but harvesting organs. I also liked that. I thought I guessed that was gonna be that. I guessed that twist, but I was very satisfied that I did it. Because I just thought it's an interesting twist on, like a homage to Rosemary's Baby. Again, more steering into the modern thing of just rich people being pieces of shit who think that poor people's life matters less, whatever. Then Home Before Dark, the twists were that nothing was supernatural, which I thought that if any book of Riley's should have been supernatural, that should have been the one. And I guess that was like a nod, oh yeah, Amityville Horror was a hoax, whatever. But I thought, come on, just go into supernatural for once, you know, you want to. I will get to the other book later. But the twist that her father fabricated the stories to cover up the crime that he killed a young girl who witnessed him killing his mother. I mean, humans are the real monsters, right? So I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. And obviously, the ghosts that Maggie thought she encountered being townsfolk that were blackmailed by her father, I mean, that all ties in together. So again, no big comment there. So yeah, I understand why Riley did it, but again, I would like for him to actually just lean into it, and I'll talk about it shortly. And for Survive the Night, I did not see it coming that Josh was not the campus killer, personally. I thought that we were just going to lean into it, but I didn't really know what to expect from Riley, because Survive the Night was the first book of his that I ever read. So I was like, okay, I see what's happening here. We're going to twist. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. Then once I realized what was going on, that was going to be someone else, I have to admit that I was very proud of myself that I guessed who the killer could be. I mean, I know maybe in hindsight it was like he was one of the only few people who were in the book, so who else could it be? But still, the fact that her boyfriend Robbie was the killer, I mean, I was like, yeah, I guessed it. I'm so smart. It made sense. I mean, realistic. Egotistical bastard being a serial killer. Well, we've been there, done that, right? In this life. And I did not expect that the entire story, the way it was written out, it was actually the movie version of the story. And the fact that we only know what really went down through an offhanded comment by Charlie, I was like, what? That really surprised me. Now, something that I did not like was that she ended up marrying Josh, the guy who technically kidnapped her, even though he was just a bounty hunter, not a serial killer. That's my least favorite thing ever done in a Riley book, I think, just because I think it's a bit out of order. I don't think that it's okay. And no matter what, imagine telling that story to your grandchildren. How did you two meet? Oh, he kidnapped me. I guess the 90s were a different time. I don't know. But I personally didn't like that. I think that it would have made sense. Maybe if she felt like forgiving him and making like amends for her own mental well-being, okay. But I think that she should have either been with someone completely different or just stayed single. So, yeah. Did not like that. Then the house across the lake. We're into this part. I don't understand why out of all the Riley books, all the ones that he has, which, as we saw, quite a few of them, right? I don't understand why this is the one that he chose to go supernatural for. I don't get it, personally, but okie dokie. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I knew what to expect. If I didn't know, I think I would have been more pissed off. Because obviously we get that whole, Casey's dead husband possesses her neighbor's body. And, then we get another twist where Casey's unreliable, revealing that she knew Len, her husband, was a serial killer. And that was like, okay, whatever. And she's the one who killed him. So that whole thing was like, okay, see, I don't mind an unreliable narrator, but that one felt a bit like, okay, you are now just taking the piss and being like, whoopsie, so I was a killer the whole time. Okie dokie. It's like, there are ways to do this sort of thing. Books like A Gone Girl do it really well, but that's Gone Girl, of course, so yeah, this is not Gone Girl. And now I remember why this is ranked last, because I did not enjoy that. And then we get the fact that Catherine's husband Tom was also trying to kill her, so like Casey was right about that. Yeah, I just, like I said, I don't really think that the supernatural thing was needed. Like, I was fine with it while I was reading. I was like, okay, this is happening, whatever. But yeah, I don't get it. And I will explain later. But then we have the only one left. So the main twist is that Ms. Baker is actually the real Lenora. I'm not gonna lie, I did not see that coming, but it does make sense. It's very convoluted, but again, I guess sisterhood can be a petty bitch. And then the fact that Kit's father was one of the murderers, I did not see coming, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it was so convoluted, but it all made sense in that elevated reality of his books, where it's like, yeah, this is crazy, but it is all tying in, so just embrace it and enjoy the ride. And then the whole thing where her father was the one to euthanize her mother, but tricked Kid into believing that she did it. Again, by the time that things were coming into light, I knew that that was going to happen. So, like, okay, well, that makes sense. And then, Jessie being Virginia's granddaughter was like, okay, whatever. And then the fact that Virginia faked her, disability, being paralyzed for 50 years, I was like, okay, I'm not a fan of that massively. Like, it didn't drag down the book from the ranking, but I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit whatevs. I don't know. I was like, surely no one is that petty, right? I think it ties into the theme of bitterness and wanting to keep the family confined, but I was like, this is a bit much, but what do I know? Then for the middle of the night, we have the reveal that Billy's death was an accident. He was killed by Ashley, who is Ethan's childhood neighbor and becomes a love interest. And it was a drunk driving, very I Know What You Did Last Summer style, because she ends up throwing his body in the lake. So very simple reveal. And I remember feeling a bit underwhelmed. I was like, that's it. But that's what I mean. And Riley really like doubled down on keeping the twist more simple. And then the haunting, again, another like haunting instance where it turns out to be human, everything was orchestrated by Billy's younger brother, Andy, who was trying to expose the truth of what happened to Billy. And the tent cutting, it was Russ who did it, because he was jealous and wanted to ruin the sleepover, so it wasn't the kidnapper or anyone else, because there was no kidnapper. And a twist that I anticipated, but was still like, oh, okay, I guess that's a bit of a cliche, but it made sense character-wise, was that Ethan's wife, Claudia, was dead, and Ethan knows that, but didn't reveal it to the reader till like a quarter left of the story. It's his way of dealing with his grief and all of that. Twists weren't actually listed. It's been a year since I read it, so I need a reminder. But we have Dante being Anna's rival's half-brother. No, sorry, he's Anna's half-brother. He is the son of Anna's primary rival. And Anna's ally, Seamus, was also seeking vengeance and committed several of the murders in the story. Like I said, I was kind of like loving all of that was happening. Like, it's number 2 for a reason. Like, I loved that book genuinely. That the true killer was Reggie, the son of the train's deceased engineer who faked his own death to eliminate the conspirators. It's like, again, I was for it. Yeah, I didn't mind that. Like, yeah, it was a bit crazy with the whole like FBI at the end and all that, but I was just living, laughing, loving with it, you know. And then the unknown, so the twist that I literally just finished reading it on Saturday, so I remember things. Obviously, I'd be concerned if I didn't. So number 1 is that none of the hauntings were real. Again, it was fine, but at the same time, come on, Riley, this is like the 3rd book where you're using the fake out that it's not supernatural, but it's all human. Again, lean into supernatural properly. If you could do it for fucking House Across the Lake, then do it for another book. Home Before Dark, and this one would have been perfect. Just lean into it. What's stopping you? I don't understand. Like, okay, it was fine. I understand what they were going for here. What he was going for in the story, but at the same time, I was like, come on, man. So, you know, that's... depends how you feel about it, I guess. Then, the whole Me Too-esque thing about Ronan being a sexual predator, well, that could have been seen from a mile away. So I was like, okay, this is happening. No strong feelings particularly, like, that's what they were going for. Okay, bit of femme rage, let's kill men sort of thing. Then, again, I had a bit of a hope that we were going to lean into supernatural with that possession thing with Violet, but obviously when it was revealed that that couldn't have happened, I was like, okay. And the one thing, the twist that I really didn't like was that Azria, whatever, how do you pronounce that? I really didn't like that it was revealed that Daisy and like all of those characters were actually a figment of her imagination, that she has a dissociative identity disorder. I really didn't like that, because I don't like mental health being used as a twist like that. I think that if you do want to talk about mental health and horror, there are better ways to do it. And also, it just feels a bit lazy. I feel like 10 books in, Riley should know better. And I personally think that this entire passage of those past things, it felt a bit lazy with events repeating themselves like that repetitively. After like 5 of those chapters, I was like, okay, we get it. This is all happening again. And it just felt a bit... I personally don't even think that the past bit was needed. Just make it about actresses on an island. And I generally don't think the story would have changed at all if you wrote it like that. So yeah, I didn't like that. The fact that Marin ended up blackmailing Violet, well, it was in line with her character. Because going from Anna to Marin was not a really good person or very likable, even though she had her traumas and stuff. So again, it made sense to me. I was like, okay, well, you know that you haven't earned any of this, and that there are a lot more talented women than you, but you just happen to exploit the right person at the right time. So it's like, in a way, you're becoming the person you hate. You're a perpetrator, whatever. It is what it is. So yeah, my voice is shot now, but that is it. This is all things Riley. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time.